Hello, everyone. With me today is Seb from Seb Make Stuff. So
How you doing, guys?
let's just say hi to everyone in the chat and then we can get rolling. So, hi Charlene, hi Dungeon Matron, hi Campaign Terrain, and hi Lawrence. How are you guys doing? Okay, so Seb, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got started into the whole hobby and crafting thing?
No worries. We had a little chat before, like I was saying, the Lord of the Rings Warhammer magazine came out when I was probably 13 or 14. And at the time, I was just obsessed with Lord of the Rings, as I think most kids my age were. The whole fantasy thing was right up my alley, and that movie just sold me both on the fantasy world and filmmaking in general. I did assignments on Peter Jackson for school.
You
So
lucky.
I was a total dork, but I got totally into that. Me and my two cousins were the exact same age. We just got sold on the Lord of the Rings world. We bought every single one of those magazines up to the point where our parents wouldn't bankroll it anymore. And then we started making terrain. So I've still got a couple of pieces somewhere in amongst my boxes from when I was about 15. um, which are always fun to pull out and compare to what I've got now. I might have to do a video on that eventually.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, but then I think like a lot of people in the hobby, as I got to about 17, 16, 17, I discovered girls and skateboarding and fell off the hobby for a while until just before COVID, when I watched some of the corridor crew guys and started getting into Critical Role. Like I think a lot of people's first real introduction to the D&D world, and fell in love with that. Absolutely loved it. Watched the second campaign through twice, which is God knows how many hours spent listening
That
to that
that's
stuff
some
while
serious
I
dedication.
craft. Oh, it's great. But that's what I was listening to while I was building a lot of my early stuff. And yeah, basically, it just got me back into the hobby. I bought the D&D starter pack. I pulled out most of my old Lord of the Rings miniatures and got my mates together, and we managed to play through the first few sections of the Lost Dungeons of Fandelver,
All right.
which most of us know as the early starter pack. And I just started building things from it. As soon as I had one game down, I'm a bit of a dork for having my miniatures and my craft stuff in general, and I just fell in love. So it kicked me off from there, and probably about a year into the hobby till I started making these videos. But I actually make videos for a living. It's what I do full time.
Okay, that explains a lot.
So yeah.
Yeah, because the quality of the
So
videos is.
why thank you. But yeah, I think that's sort of like I knew I had that advantage to a lot of people jumping in, and thought this is what I do. Why not bring it into my hobby?
Yeah.
It also gives me an excuse to make something every week. Ideally, I've been a bit lazy the last couple, but it prompts me to do something when otherwise I wouldn't. And sometimes it's hard to get the motivation to do something, but once you have a reason to do it, everything just flows.
Yeah, pretty much. I've had the same experience with building stuff for the channel.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you fall off the wagon. Like August, for example, was literally too hot to craft. I just couldn't sit down and do something. But I totally get what you mean. But
Yeah.
one thing I really like about your videos is that you use all sorts of different materials. You're not stuck into like cardboard and XPS side. The crystal trees one was a good example of was a good case in point, but you do also tend to use quite random materials.
Yeah, thank you. I That crystal one was one of those ones that I'm pretty proud of. The video itself was a little bit blurry, but the content I really like that one. Like I was saying, I don't think the borax is available everywhere, but there are a few other options I'm going to be probably testing out. So hopefully we can get some more different stuff out there. But really, I just like crafting with a lot of different things. I do like to make things outside of just D&D as well. So bringing a lot of different elements together. And I get a little bit bored working with the same materials over and over again. So I think that's a little bit sometimes of a weakness, but it can also spurn on something new. And I really think that's where the fun in this sort of stuff comes from. Something that no one's ever seen on a table before always spurns a different little bit of an imagination.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, although you tend to hop between materials and stuff, do you have any particular go-to techniques or things like how do I put it? Let's say if you're trying to build something new,
If
is
I'm trying to build something new, I'll start with a sketch. I think
mhm.
a lot of people do. I'll really like, I've just got a notepad pretty much everywhere. I've got tons of them all over the house, but I'll just sketch out as many different concepts as I can kind of think of while I'm laying in bed or listening to a podcast or something. And then it really depends on the project. So if I'm building a structure, I will usually start with some foams and things like that, just to build out a basic, sorry, excuse me,
No worries.
build out a basic shape. But smaller things like the miniatures and stuff, it's definitely more 3D kit bashing.
Mhm.
So I'm still being too lazy to actually learn to use Blender and the systems properly, but just taking elements from different models and just merging them together using the basic systems. Essentially, it's like making a collage, but with 3D elements. So
Pretty
once
much.
then printed out, I've kind of got a lot of my objects ready to go. So I've made a few miniatures that way and built out a few of my more custom early shapes when I did a lot of the carnival recently. So a lot of those were built that way. And yeah, I think I've fallen off that a little bit lately. I've gone back more to trying to do more builds that everyone can do that doesn't have a 3D printer. Because I know personally that's something that annoys me sometimes when I'm watching a channel and they're using all these fancy tools and things that I can't get or I can't afford at the moment. But I'd love to build that thing. So I'm definitely trying to go more and more into the dollar store options and different ways of approaching things.
Yeah, that makes sense. The dollar store option again. Not everyone everywhere has dollar stores, but there's always some kind of super cheap budget place with these funny toys.
Exactly. We don't have the same ones here that you'll see a lot of stuff from the States either. Like I'm Australian based. So we've got our own different random shops that'll do it, but always on the lookout for something different. Even places like Amazon and things, you can often find some really interesting, weird stuff just by delving deeper into what some of the sales people have in their options.
Yeah, it can get pretty weird down there though.
Oh, don't go too deep.
Okay, and you were telling me earlier that you're also working on some streaming stuff now, or going to?
Yeah, so there's guys down here, they're based around Brisbane in Australia as well, of Dice and Magic, who do a really awesome stream. The quality's kind of out of this world for something I've seen for some local guys. The DM Cody contacted me a while ago, and we've done a couple of builds for the channel together already.
Oh,
And
nice.
we're going to do some really big ones going forward that I'll feature on the channel. And I'm hoping to feature a bit more on theirs. So it looks like I'm probably going to be a guest at some point on their main channel, and we're hoping to do a one shot at one point. But they're available on Spotify if anyone out there is interested. Get a lot more of my accent, but these guys do some really high quality role play.
Okay, Dungeon Matron says, "Yay, you're my hero, Seb. I don't have a Proxen or a 3D printer." And
Oh, there we go. I'll try and do more for you, mate.
and garage sales are a good place to find things too.
Oh, absolutely. We've got op shops here, which are like the charity stores,
Hmm?
which are like thrift shop, I think is what a lot of the world call them. They're a great place to find some weird different things.
Yeah, I'm in a few groups on Facebook, and sometimes people will come up saying, "Hey, I found this in a thrift shop," and they come out with a complete box set from 1989 or something like
Oh,
that. Yeah,
even just putting out in the world that I'm into this stuff with these kinds of videos. I've had a couple of friends drop off boxes of, oh, I had this when I was a teenager and I was just going to throw it out. And inside there's a full set of like a full Warhammer army of probably a few $100 worth of stuff. It's like fantastic.
yeah.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I mean a full Warhammer army from the
From the
90s.
old stuff,
Yeah,
yeah.
I have no idea how many kidneys that would be worth today.
Oh, I've got a couple down here, some beast men and some lizard men and things. Half of them are missing pieces though, so I tend to play with my toys, not keep them in the box.
I hear you, but that's what they're for. I mean, I really can't understand
Exactly.
people just putting them in a display shelf and just looking at them for years. That's a very weird thing to do.
No, I trash my stuff.
So, we're saying you're going to be in this role-playing podcast. Are you playing or are you DMing?
I'll be playing, which will be the first time playing.
Ever,
So,
ever?
as a lot
Seriously?
of the guys out there, yeah, I've never been a player.
Oh man.
Um, for the forever DM situation. I've played as a player in a lot of other different kinds of games, but never in a real role play situation. So I'm really keen to take one of the many characters that I've made over the years just for fun and actually play them out. It'll be it'll be very interesting.
So, do you have a character in mind or that kind of thing?
I've built about 30, but I'm going to sit down with the DM and, as it's a guest spot in an existing campaign, try and build something into to fit into the situation.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's a completely unique world as well, so I can't just
Mm,
go too silly. I don't think. Got to respect my DM.
yeah, fair enough. Okay, Lawrence is saying second-hand stores are a great place to find stuff as well. True. And Dungeon Matron is asking, will you be using your terrain in the game?
Absolutely. So they've already used a couple of pieces of mine up there, and I think I was just talking. We were talking about it the other day that hopefully in the next few weeks we're going to get together and build a really big set piece, which we will be
Ooh,
using for the game that I'll be a part of.
ooh,
Trying to
nice.
use some Halloween skeletons, make a giant, terrifying situation.
Okay. You mean like making a table out of a full-sized Halloween skeleton kind of thing?
Exactly.
Okay. That would be worth seeing. Okay.
Yeah, I've seen a few good ones on some of the Facebook groups. There's a few really cool designs out there with this sort of stuff, and the idea of some kind of giant skeleton with a town or something built over it really just sets off my fantasy buzzer.
Speaking of crafting, I'm just dropping the link to the community showcase on the chat. So if anyone has any work in progress or finished pieces they would like to show off, they can just drop them in there and we'll have a look at them later. So, saying massive skeleton with a town built over it. That reminds me of the Planescape setting in D&D setting second edition. That's a
Yeah,
long
there's a
time ago.
really big map I've seen with a similar sort of feel. I think that's kind of the inspiration originally behind it.
Nice. Speaking of set pieces and terrain, do you prefer to build large single-use pieces or do you prefer to make smaller stuff that you can reuse over and over?
I really like the idea of the big builds, but storage is always my main issue. I think a lot of us have that same problem. Like, I'm in a really lucky situation where I'm in a place with a big double garage that I can store a lot of my stuff in.
Oh, nice.
But after a while, you've kind of built a lot of the big things. So, like I was saying, my channel started over a year into my really serious crafting. So, I've got a lot of stuff just sitting out there already. Now I tend to lean more towards the small things, mostly because of that exact reason.
Okay,
And because I'm trying to build something every week, it
mhm,
gets pretty hard when you're doing the big builds.
for sure, yeah. But how do you define small? Because small means different things to different people.
That's true. Well, lately I've been really going with, if I grab these, some small, where's the
Nice.
camera up here?
A second, let
Um,
me.
so it gives me a certain size to work with.
All right.
So anything I can build on that base, I can then fit into these jars that can work as a nice little display piece as well.
Nice.
So I'm kind of building around that size at the moment because they can work as scatter as well. But some of my pieces, I've done a 3x4 foot board, and
Okay.
I'm currently working on a fairly large, like just a basic style building, a classic D&D building that almost every craft has had to make, but I'm putting a bit of a spin on it,
All right.
basing mine off some pop culture to
All right.
give us something a bit more interesting in the game.
Yeah, that's always one of the fun parts of the game is when you start injecting references and pop culture into it.
Exactly. And I've been playing around with Hero Forge lately, being able to make some really cool custom minis that start to represent the pieces.
I'm really surprised at how do you say it? How flexible Hero Forge has become.
Yeah, the really customizable, like how much you can move down to the hands and fingers is astonishing to get the right kinds of poses, because that's really the main thing that we want out of that kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing. I mean, you wouldn't have seen that 5 or 6 years ago. That they really came along
Ah,
really fast.
yeah, they nailed that, really, especially with the growth of the 3D printing world.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm really
Okay,
excited to see this future.
okay. Tina Martins hoping to say hi from Ardèche in France. Lucky you, Tina.
Welcome.
Uh, Going back to the smart train, is there something that you find yourself using over and over again, like a really useful piece of terrain?
That's a tough one. My main big piece is just a grass board, something fairly flat, I think is the main go-to thing for me, because anything really can build off that. But I did one video a little while ago with the modular flower beds, which can be like torn up and placed around. I put those on almost every single table layout. Anytime I do like a photo shoot for one of my builds, they just work really well at blending the edges of other builds into the environment.
Yeah, for sure, and it's also adds a lot of color and depth.
Yeah, exactly. And because they're still flat, miniatures can sit on them, and it really just covers up all those seam lines, gives them a bit more depth. And being the little film dork that I am, I really like the idea of when my players look at the board, they can see a movie set.
Well, that's what it is at the end of the day. It's like it's a stage or
Absolutely.
a set, if you want to call it like that.
Exactly. And some of my friends that they like to play, but they're not the most imaginative. So the more I can put in front of them, the more that they'll get into the situation, and then the role play tends to flow.
Yeah, I when I started off, I think at most we used to use uh, dry erase boards for this,
Yep.
but we're talking about late 90s and stuff like that. And
That's what our first game was.
yeah, And I'm really happy that the whole terrain thing made the jump from wargaming to role playing because it does add a lot to it.
Absolutely. I've tried to play a couple of times just with theater of the mind, which works great when you're just doing the role play section, but very tough in battle.
Oh yeah, for sure. Also, theater of the mind is a lot more taxing on DMs because again, if you're doing combat, you have to keep track of literally everything that's going on. But also, when you're
Yeah.
coming to descriptions and so on, it's much easier to explain if you say, "Okay, here it looks like this."
Yes. I think it gets everyone excited too.
Okay, campaign terrain says I use my grass board. I've been wanting to make flower mats like Seb showed in his videos. They look super useful.
Like I said, I think they are the most versatile piece that I've made by far.
Okay, speaking of your pieces, what do you say we jump in and look at the photos you sent me?
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're starting off with this turtle.
This guy, he was probably the biggest boost my channel has had.
Okay.
Um, I put a short video of this up on Reddit that got 1.8 million views in a
Oh,
day. So I think a lot of people that know my channel probably know it because of this. Um, but this little guy is still probably one of my favorite miniatures that I've built, just because I don't know, it's the color combos, the detail. I just had fun. I had no real plan of it. I thought of him one night and I woke up the next day and pretty much spent the whole day just building, completely carried away.
yeah,
And now
it's got a lot
I've
of
had,
character and stuff, and character colors,
yeah,
and
and I've had probably a dozen people sending me their own versions of this build. So much bigger ones with whole houses on the back. I've had one which was built on the back of an ox instead of a turtle. It's just, this was really the one I think that showed me that the community out there can take something that I can just, pull from my brain and they can twist it, turn it into their own games. And I don't know, that feels incredible to me that there's this community of Feywild magic turtle shopkeepers wandering around different games out there.
what scale is this? Because I'm
Um, it's it's built at 28 millimeter scale, but
okay.
the kobolds on the back are about half size because they're
All
small
right.
miniatures. So I should put a picture somewhere, maybe up of this with a miniature next to it. But a 28 millimeter miniature would probably come up to about just over halfway up, maybe to the top of the turtle's head. So that could fit in the palm of a hand comfortably.
I just love all the details on it.
Yeah, those are almost all of those, except for the Monstera plants, are available for free on Thingiverse as well,
All right.
which is for those who have a resin 3D printer. These tiny little details can be a game changer on most of these builds.
Okay. Since we mentioned 3D printers, Zane magically appeared. Hi, Zane. Zane's my go-to guy for 3D printer stuff.
And you're correct, Zane, this would be a tortoise, as he's not swimming around.
Okay, so more tortoise. This one looks a
So
bit
this was
more.
actually, I built this one. This was probably the first build that I did when I got back into the crafting.
All right.
So I made this guy probably 4 years ago, just threw him together the day before a thing. And that's what made me want to build the other guy, doing an updated version of him.
All right.
So that's the difference over from when I first got back into crafting to what I'm doing now.
I love this little goblin on the, or whatever it is on the.
Yeah, I have no idea. I got that off a Kickstarter.
All right.
They're a free model out there that the guys released, They do have more available you can get, I think, but they're just the weirdest, creepy little things. And I feel like with a lot of my Feywild builds that they're the kind of creepy helpers that some arch Fey would be using.
Yeah, but this shot, for example, is definitely they see me rolling. And the Feywild setting is interesting because you can do all these kind of creepy, cute mashups kind of thing.
Absolutely. I really enjoy that, being able to add, bright colors amongst dark, creepy things, like
Yeah.
a juxtaposition of styles.
Okay. Campaign Terrain says, Seb, why do you like mushrooms so much and frogs?
That's a very good question. I am a avid gardener. I have
Oh,
a
really?
massive aquarium. I have a pet turtle. I have a huge garden out the back. So it's just any kind of plants and color and life that I can add to any of my stuff is sort of just my sort of personal aesthetic. Um, and then when I found those miniature mushrooms, they're just perfect for a Feywild situation, I think. Like you throw a few mushrooms and a little frog and some butterflies onto something, and it just gives it that the extra bit that it didn't have before.
That little je ne sais quoi.
Exactly.
Okay, Corellian says, I'm looking forward to watching your channel and learning some new things to add to my hobby. Thank you for your art.
Thank you for watching it. That's the only reason I put it out there, is for all of you guys. Like the idea that we can like share these ideas, and anyone out there building something that could be inspired by me the same way I have by all of these other epic channels that are out there. This community is just brilliant.
Oh yeah, for sure it is. I mean, being able to bounce ideas with other people is, I think, is the fastest growth I've ever had in my crafting skills. Just being able to
Yeah.
bounce ideas off. Okay.
Oh, and the inspiration.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Seeing what some of you guys out there put up on these Facebook groups and things just blows me away. Makes me feel like my stuff isn't worth putting out there.
Ah, come on.
Oh, I'm not going to stop.
Oh, definitely don't. I mean, come on, look at this little guy. So cute.
Exactly. I enjoy it all too much.
Okay, Earthman Brick joined us. Hi, Steve. And Dungeon Matron asked you, do you name your builds, Seb?
I named some of the different things. So like this turtle guy, we've named Herbert, which is after my granddad, just because he was the biggest build and everyone's copying him. So it was a little bit of an homage to that. So it's Herbert the tortoise. He's a awakened tortoise, and he actually has a stat sheet on D&D Beyond somewhere that someone on Reddit made for him. So he's fully built in. And then I have a skull dice tower that I've named Dave. Don't know why, just because I felt like the guy needed a name if I was working on his skull.
Fair, yeah.
But no, I don't really name the rest of them other than that.
Okay, jump on to the next one. Okay, I don't
It's
think.
just a little selfie.
Yeah, I don't think you can take credit for this one. I think this is more your parents.
Yeah, no, that's just me at my basic set.
I really love the lighting.
Right behind me here as well. Yeah, again, it's the advantage of being a videographer and editor as a trade, that I have extra bits and pieces of LEDs and things like that I can set up.
Yeah.
So it was a big jump from my first video when I decided to actually set up my lights, I think.
Right? Lisa says all skulls are Boba for me. Yeah, fair. Okay, next one. I think this is this one of the critical role characters.
No, so this one was my first commission.
Ooh, all right.
So asked to make a custom character. So I was given a few pieces of art that the guy had done, and this is one of those Hero Forge builds. So customizing and tweaking it up as much as I could, and then I built a couple of elements separately and put the whole thing together. Custom built the little anvil rot raptor,
So
which is the bird.
that's a custom build.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's using the 3D kit bashing method that I was talking about, of just mashing a heap of shapes together that
All
I
right.
built using Tinkercad to make the bird shape. And then built him a magnetized base based off the world and the land of Theros, which is the Greek-inspired D&D world.
Okay.
So yeah, it's just an idea of how much customization can get done. That one really kind of set me off on that.
Yeah, this base looks real good.
Yeah, and again, in the same kind of thing that can fit into one of those display jars.
All right.
So when I got to send it off to the guy, he actually now has that in a little display jar on his shelf.
Nice. What do you use for the rocks and stuff around the base?
The rocks are plaster molds. So I've got the Woodland
Okay.
Scenics, a couple of different ones of their plaster molds. And then I pretty much just coat them with, it's one of the contrast, the Space Wolves Grey in the contrast range from Citadel. And I love the way that the stone comes out from those with the like blue grays.
Yeah, it does look good.
That's all that I think it needs, especially against the heavy greens that I tend to use with all of the lushness of my builds. The blue stone pops.
Okay, we have a question for you again. Do you decorate your house for Halloween?
I have had a Halloween party every year for my birthday since I was 21. So my birthday's the same week. I have about 15 boxes of Halloween decorations. It's getting out of hand. So yes, I do.
Okay, next. Boom, okay. Oh, this is a big one.
Yeah, so this was my big build. This was when I decided that I was going to go all out with those rock molds and go for the 3x4 foot game table, designed to mostly for wargaming in this case, but I also really planned out the concept of being able to build this up. So right now it's a deserty beach style board, but I am going to turn this into a Kashyyyk board from Star Wars. So I'm going to completely plant out all of it with tropical plants and things.
Nice.
And eventually turn it into a kind of the beach side of a jungle. But this is a full built board war game designed specifically so it can be played from like every different angle, trying to keep the approach, so from both sides I'll have the same kind of cover and everything like that.
All right.
Which was one of the more interesting kind of builds. But again, I think I mentioned to you earlier, I designed this so that me and my roommate could play Star Wars Legion. And to this day, we haven't actually played a game. So it's all sitting here ready now, painted it all up and ready to go. We've just got to make the time to learn how to play.
It must be frustrating having a board like that and I want to play.
It is, but I'm also, I tend to get more excited by the idea of building things half of the time and am easily distracted back by my next build.
Yeah,
so this goes into the garage with the other ones, and then I sort of forget what I've got out there sometimes.
Yeah, then you are going to the garage one day and suddenly a random Star Wars tabletop appears.
Exactly. I think I'm going to have to do a video at some point soon, just going through my full collection of all my old builds, really showing like how much crap that I've put together over the years.
Yeah, it's not crap. I mean, I'm pretty sure that some people would love to have those.
Ah, well, I feel like I'm going to pull a fair bit of it out and be donating some of it to my local game shop and some other people I know that play. So it's going to have another life. It's just sitting in a garage right now, not getting used though. So
Yeah, that's
it's
always
not
a bit
happy
sad.
like
Yeah.
that. Exactly. But yeah, this was one of, again, those boards that I wanted to go down to the idea of being able to get down really close and maybe shoot photos against it as well and have it look cinematic even at a close scale. So really went to town on the rock formations and getting the textures and playing around with the leopard spotting technique that a lot of people online have done already. But yeah, following along that, it's quite incredible how realistic some of this rock can come out.
Okay, Lawrence Davis saying I've built several Legion boards. He has shown us a few on this stream a few times. When he says several, he means several.
I
Okay,
definitely want to build some more. I love the Star Wars setting, so it's
and
great to be able to build things that can work in both fantasy and sci-fi.
oh yeah, for sure. I think in this case, I think the only thing that would stand out would be that building and the generator, but I think both of those are removable. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just scatter, and same with the bridge. So that's just a piece that I also have a fantasy bridge the same size, so that can be swapped out.
Nice.
And all of the flat pieces on this board were designed as well to be the right size, so that all of my Hagglethorn Hollow model prints can fit around the place, which are the large
The
fantasy
the
buildings.
what? Hageltorn Hollow? No idea.
Hagglethorn Hollow, which is a Kickstarter of models by the Weta Workshop guys. Um, there's a really popular video. They're one of the more well-known ones out there, I think, because Adam Savage and Tested did a video on them a few years ago. But I've got a handful of those models printed, and they're incredible
Nice.
fantasy style backdrop buildings.
I'm not sure if I remember if I'm mixing them. Is that the one where there are like the buildings are made out of the trees or something like that? It's
That's a part of that Kickstarter as well. There are some of those ones,
all right.
but the main buildings are more just like old fantasy ramshackle style buildings that you can print them out and spin them all around to look different. So one print can look like four different things.
Nice. Dungeon Matron says that snow base would be great for a Christmas holiday display.
I've done a few really big snowboards actually in the past, talking of snow, for the
Larger.
Icewind Dale. So I ran the Icewind Dale campaign for a
All right.
while. So I've got some ice builds and things in the garage, which I might pull out at some point. But yeah, the Christmas displays are actually something that I draw a lot of inspiration from at that time of year. A lot of people put out some really interesting things like Instagram and TikTok and all those kind of places. Some of those craft people come up with some really cool ways to use things.
Yeah, I often look at these photos and displays by people who make Christmas cribs. So nativity scenes with baby Jesus and the donkey and stuff
Yes.
like that. Some of those people are just you don't call them model makers, you call them artists. It's amazing what they
Oh,
come up with.
well, they pay very much respect towards what they're making. So, yes, it's a bit different than us slapdashing something together for a game.
Still, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff we can learn from them, even if
Absolutely.
pos- pos-
And
possibly not to that depth
the
because
old
it might be a bit too fragile, I guess.
yeah, well, the old the railroad guys, that's the
Oh, them
stuff to
too,
look
yeah.
at. A lot of the channels, YouTube channels online, don't get enough praise, but some of those older guys can. Their ideas are just fantastic.
That's another thing that amazes me with railroad guys is how long they will work on a piece.
Oh yeah,
And yeah,
blows my mind.
yeah. Okay, let's jump on to the next one.
So speaking of Halloween, before
Okay.
these are one of my Halloween decorations. So I built these originally probably 9 years ago for one of my parties, and I built about 20 of them and had them in cages all hanging from the roof in various poses, like they were trying to break out in a creepy little den corner of the house. Um, but yeah, I recently pulled a few of them out and thought they'd be a good craft, because anyone like me out there that is into a lot of this stuff, I thought also might like to have some more life-size props to be able to put down around the table or in the back of their shelf.
Okay, Dungeon Matron says, I used to build a Christmas village complete with train every year. Then I got a cat.
No,
And
you'll need a full cage for that then.
and Earthman Brick says that's a serious nightmare fuel rider.
That's the goal.
What did you build that
These are
out
built
of?
to terrify. So that's just a little cheap, like dollar store style skeleton. It's
All
probably
right.
like 2 or 3 inches tall, and then I've just wrapped it in Glad wrap or cling wrap, and hit it with a heat gun. You can also use just like a hairdryer
Okay,
or
yeah.
a live flame, and it causes the cling wrap to suction in and just form that really weird sinewy kind of
Uh,
ropey texture.
kind of like shrink wrapping it basically. Yeah,
Exactly.
nice.
And then you just give the whole thing a really sloppy coat with a deck stain, like a timber stain,
Ah,
and it
okay.
gives it that dried, burnt out flesh kind of tone. It's also called corpsing. It's commonly done through Halloween time to add creepy flesh tones to like bigger skeletons.
Okay.
So just taking that old Halloween build style and bring it down, and sticking some feathers and fur to it to add some fur and wings, and you've got a very creepy little display.
Yeah. I mean, I especially like the how it looks in the display case. It's like
Yeah,
one of those Victorian curios kind of thing.
exactly. So I've got a pile of those builds now on the cupboard behind me, called what is my cabinet of curiosities. So the concept is that it looks like what could be seen on the shelf of a wizard somewhere.
You know, one thing that might make it even creepier is if you put a little speaker inside the base or something like that.
Oh yeah, maybe get some light up eyes and a motion sensor.
Maybe just have it chittering or something like that.
Oh, a little bit of a shake would freak it out for sure. I could creep some people out nicely.
Okay, next up we have your ent.
Yeah, so this is another one of those guys that I just covered with details. But this is for anyone out there who's looking for another crafter to follow, Encounter Terrain. I know
Mhm.
he's mostly on YouTube. He does have some other posts around the place as well, but these are a style of trees that I
The
unashamedly stole from him
pipe cleaner tree,
and
yeah?
have twisted into my own things. So he does the pipe cleaners twisted up, and you run the flame across them, and it
Hmm.
pulls it back to make this really interesting texture that I really do quite like for an entish bark kind of feel. So you can mass produce trees that you can keep bending around and changing the shape of, which makes them a lot more playable.
I've seen the
So I took that with some sculptor mold and made myself an ent.
nice. I've seen the technique used a bunch of times, but it's the first time I've seen it used on something like this. For
Yeah,
something other than a tree. I mean,
exactly. Well, that was the whole thing. I kind of just I wanted an ent. I knew it straight away because I was doing the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and there's a situation in that game with a huge entish tree that some of the small hideaway, runaway children are living in.
all right.
So that was the original design for the purpose for this guy. And I really was struggling with how to build the ent. I saw a lot of different people making them out there, but with the encounter terrain method, I just sort of figured out it really comes together quite nicely. I was I was personally surprised how well this one came out.
It does look awesome. Even the pose. I think in this one, it's look. I'm going for a walk.
Exactly. And like I was saying, because of the what it's built of, I can actually repose in if I really want to.
Okay, so it doesn't crack or break or anything. It stays flexible.
It does, depending on what you've used. So through the body of this guy, I've actually soaked him in resin to help him stay solid because I wanted the stomach area to stay the same.
Okay.
But I've really drenched the arms in paint.
Okay.
So they're going to stick. And I think the encounter terrain stuff now, he actually recommends dipping them in timber stain as well because it soaks through the whole thing.
All right.
Just another cut from one of my thumbnails, giving an idea of the scale of that guy.
He's a big guy. Okay. Now these are
A
some
few
of
of
the
the
details I really
details
love on your
around the
build.
base. Yeah, so these again, those mushrooms and little tiny free 3D prints online. And then over time, I've collected a few more little extra accessories from other Kickstarters and things that I've supported. I have a good little collection now. So I have a little tackle box full of tons of prints at this scale that I've just printed off in the past. So now I've got a big pile of them ready to go for any build.
I really like the splashes of color on the base, though. It's not a solid green or whatever. It really
No,
adds a lot
exactly.
to the scene.
I think it's the big thing, the nature thing, and like I was saying, loving my gardens and things is having a mix of different things. If you've just got the same stuff, it looks too bland, and that's definitely not what nature is, especially in a Feywild situation.
There he goes. I really like the
Yeah, so he's the
treehouse thing on his back.
yeah. Well, again, that's part of the story, so I knew I had to have it built in there, but I've made that removable as well, so I can have him just as an ant, or I can have him as something a bit more interesting.
It's great stuff.
It's
Okay.
always fun to give the players something to try and climb up to as well. He's designed in a way that if I face him backwards, you can't see that he's not
Oh,
just a tree. So if they don't explore well enough, they might just try and climb the tree house.
whoops.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now this is one from one of your most recent videos.
Yeah, so this is the same style of tree build using that encounter terrain pipe cleaners, but this time using borax and a melting it down and letting it kind of use a chemical solution, which was an old science experiment I did when I was a kid. And yeah, the idea kind of just came together that this would be perfect for that again, Feywild or Underdark or just something I'd never seen done,
Oh,
which to
no, for sure.
me is very rare these days. And to be able to add something new to the hobby, like I've said in the video, is really quite a cool thought.
How durable is the crystal part?
Sorry?
How durable is the crystal part? I mean, like, does it flake off, or literally is it just a solid lump of?
No, it's really solid. I've actually got right here, I've got a couple. Um, so these were a couple of the test builds and
Okay.
kind of smacking together. A little bits will fall off, but nothing.
Yeah, but you're really hammering them there.
Yeah.
It's not like
I've dropped them off
gently dusting them.
tables and they've been fine. So
Nice.
I've not had any issue, but I've definitely been told that you should seal them up. So, like in the case of the picture you see here, that one's painted up with gloss resin,
All right.
gloss inks, um, just to keep them all properly sealed up because apparently it's not pet safe. So, be warned, anyone out there, keep these away from your pets. But aside from that, they're holding up. They don't seem to have any issues on the table. Like I said, they've been knocked over more than once and they haven't broken on me.
Nice. Okay, campaign terrain says, I want to try it, but I have to make sure whatever kind of crystal I grow is impervious to humidity.
Well, I live in the subtropics here, so I'm in that exact same situation. Um, a cheap option that people have said to this video is clear nail polish is a really good way to seal these up from that.
Alright, that's good to know. I think you had mentioned that you could also do this with salt instead of borax at some earlier, but
Yeah, so a few people have commented on the Reddit video that this can be done with salt, and the borax, which is the chemical I use in this, can't actually be purchased everywhere. So unfortunately, I think England and the EU, you guys aren't able to just easily get this. Like, we can buy it at pretty much any store as a cleaning product, but salt is another option apparently. So I'm going to have to do a couple of experiments with that and maybe do another video to see how well that actually works. But it'd be good to try it out and see if there's another option for the rest of you guys who can't get access to this stuff.
yeah, it would be super interesting.
Yeah, and I do have a few more plans, hopefully going forward, to do more things, kind of like what you see there, where I build the crystals into the earth. Maybe
Yeah.
some mines with some stalactites and stalagmites of crystal.
Seeing this, so this is the blue bit on the side. That's another crystal rather
That's more
than.
of the same crystal, yeah.
All right. I mean, the
So
texture is so similar. I thought it was just paint on there.
yeah, it's tough to see with the picture, but as you like with light, particularly on those, it's the reflective aspect and the fact you can kind of see through elements of it that
Nice,
shows off the crystal of it.
interesting. Lawrence Davis is saying you could even use sugar, like rock candy.
I definitely want to try that. I don't think they would last long on my table though. I have a sugar issue, so I'm not sure they would make it to the game if I'm truly honest.
I think we were talking about edible terrain a couple of months ago, and it's like, yeah, if the players get on your nerves, you can just pick up the terrain.
I've seen a few people doing some of them lately, like the biscuits in the form of dungeon tiles. I'm really liking that.
Oh no, the dungeon is collapsing. Nom 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 nom.
Exactly.
Oh, here it's much more visible.
Yeah, you can see the crystals in that one. And again, a lot of grass tufts and different color. As much as I can usually fit onto a piece, I will do. I'm a little bit obsessive when it comes to that point and usually feel like I'm going too far, but by the end, I love the way it looks. So that's all that really matters.
You know, there aren't so many ways of getting translucent stuff. Oh, this looks beautiful. There isn't
Thank
so
you.
many ways of getting translucent stuff into a build, to be honest. So this is super interesting.
I agree. Like, short of having a 3D printer and being able to do resin, which I print almost all of my things in clear resin for that reason, of just being able to have any translucent elements. But it's definitely tough trying to work with scraps and things you buy for cheap.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't get much of that. There's an idea that crystal on top again. That's a 3D resin print. So that's another way of getting translucency and
Okay.
crystals into the builds. If you don't have the ability to get the chemicals, clear resin and Vallejo game inks. They
Nice.
make beautiful crystal effects.
That little snail is really cool too.
Again, he's part of that free set that's available on Thingiverse, and all of these mushrooms and things are from that. And those details are just that's the fun to me. Like, usually most of the build, I'm looking at the model going, this thing looks ugly. What am I making? And then I hit the point where I get to add all of this color, and the whole thing just suddenly explodes to life.
Oh, this is really good. This is really, 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 really good.
yeah, so that's an idea of what my table generally looks like. Just things everywhere.
I, uh, I might be familiar with something like that.
Oh yeah, I don't want to zoom the camera out anymore because it's just a mess.
Okay, next one. Crash Bandicoot diorama, I think.
Yeah, so this was one of those days where I was trying to come up with traps for my characters for a D&D game.
All right.
And it's always tough. You know, we've seen the same traps a million times. Everyone sees the same things. And I was just packing up some old games and I saw the Crash Bandicoot remake and ended up watching some things. And I thought, why not pull some of my things from pop culture? So everyone loves it when they're playing a game, D&D or something, and a game or something they like the idea of pops up in
Yeah.
the game.
And they're
So
like, I understand
this
that
was
reference.
designed that way. Yeah, exactly. So I can throw this piece down on a shelf to look like a Crash Bandicoot diorama, or I can put it down on my table minus the crash and the crates, and I've got a little rolling obstacle that my players actually have to get through. So that's kicked me off on wanting to do a whole heap of video game based builds or pop culture based builds.
It's a great idea, especially as a source of inspiration.
Exactly. Like that's the whole thing, is that a lot of us don't know what to do next, especially when you're homebrewing the world, or even if you're playing off one of the pre-built books, filling in the gaps sometimes.
Oh yeah,
But go to all those games we love. People have been paid a lot of money to design those games to be entertaining.
yeah, for sure.
They pretty well will translate to this sort of stuff.
Okay, next. Okay,
So this is the first of the Critical Role builds.
okay,
So for anyone out there that knows Critical Role Campaign 2, this is Caduceus Clay. He was the only one that wasn't available in the full set. So I decided I had to make him.
okay. So how did you set this? Is it a Hero Forge mini or?
So this is a combination of free miniatures on Thingiverse that I found. So the head, the body, the shield, the crystal, the staff,
Okay,
and all the pouches and everything are individual models that I've printed out, cut up, and then glued together
okay,
to do a classic style kit bash.
okay.
And yeah, he came out pretty much on point to what the character looks like, I think. So
I
I'm
didn't
fairly happy with that one.
I didn't realize that there were parts from multiple miniatures in there.
Yeah, so as much different things as I can throw together.
Okay, and this.
This is another Critical Role piece for anyone out there. This is one of just a magic item from that game and from the source book. If any of you guys are playing I can't even recall what it's called, but the Critical Role based games have got this is one of the major magic items, and there was nowhere available for it. And my players have got it in the middle of their campaign that I'm running. So I have the piece that can actually sit on the table and sit with each player for that day as they have that item.
So it's like a physical prop for the game, yeah.
Yeah, and the item itself gives the player who holds it at on the day gives them an ability.
All right,
So by actually having it on the table, it can represent who has the ability for the day.
nice. What is it made of? Because I think it's semi-transparent, if I can see correctly.
Yeah, so it's a D12 with a couple of handles put on it
Oh,
and printed in 3D resin.
all right.
And then just use a few different inks and things like that to keep some transparency through it.
Okay. Yes,
But yes, that's for the Critical Role people out there will understand that one.
That's even if you're not into Critical Role, it's a really cool looking piece.
Well, that's the other thing. I really like the idea of having props on the table, like physical items that bring the characters and the players into the world. It just helps to encourage the role playing if they can look at something real, making it tangible.
All right. Nice. Okay, next up.
Yeah, and this is from the newest season of Critical Role. This is fresh cut grass. So he's one of my personal favorite characters, but this build was just a fun one to me. The day that I watched the first episode of the newest campaign and they talked about this character, I thought it was hilarious. And I jumped online and I found this model. So this is a design model by someone else, but I scaled it up like 1,000% to make it a like 6-inch display model.
All right.
And printed him out, cut him up, and added magnets so the arms and legs and head can all swivel. And built him out as a proper little like display toy piece for my shelf.
All right.
But he was one of those things that I just saw him and I instantly had to have it.
It's still a lot of work. I mean, like the putting in all the magnets and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, and the whole thing, like, it was a fairly quick build, but just fun. Having something working at a different scale. That was the first time I'd really taken the printer and decided to work outside of the miniature scale.
Okay.
Which I think I want to do a little bit more of, making that sort of like larger props and just other fun things and different ways that I can use these different craft skills to make different parts of the game more fun.
Looking at this shot, this is some really, really good photography.
Thank you very much. Again, this is the advantage of having good equipment.
And knowing what you're doing with it. I mean, I think you could give me $1 million camera and I would just like, okay, click.
Well, it's not too tough these days, to be honest. Like, if you've got a good enough lens and a good light, you can get away with a lot. I think a lot of people out there try and buy all the cameras, but you should really focus on your lighting because that will make the biggest difference to anything.
All right. To know, I think I might pick your brains on that a bit, and not after the stream because you'll probably be wanting to sleep or something. But definitely another
Yeah,
time.
we've just hit 1 a.m. here, so I'll probably crash afterwards, but the Red Bull's keeping me going for now.
Okay, Lawrence Davis says that is a cool model. Looks like he belongs in a Pixar movie. Yeah, it kind of does.
He definitely does. He's got that Wall-E feel to him. I think that's why this character fascinated me so much. I'm a massive Pixar nerd.
Okay, next up. Okay, this is your carnival build.
Yes, this is the full build. So this is what started my channel, actually. I got a hold of the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and the idea of a magic Feywild carnival that can appear in any campaign, that took over. I was lost instantly to, I want this on a table. So I got started with building. So I think my first video on the channel was, or at least one of my first would have been building the little stalls, or a first couple of stalls, and then I started building each of the different rides. And still, the board that is only 1/3 of the carnival. Eventually, I would like to try and finish building the entire thing out, but I've lost a little bit of the patience for that at this point.
How large is that? I think I'm guessing that's around 3-4
That's
feet wide.
2x4.
And it is really crowded, so that there's a lot of stuff packed in there.
Yeah, so the 2x4 for 1/3 of the map, and then eventually I want to make it a 6x4 foot entire carnival.
Okay.
I just don't have a table or anywhere that it would fit right now, so there's not much of a point to have that at this point.
Okay. Oh, here's a different view of it.
Yeah.
It does look huge.
So I've built up as many of the major rides as I could, and then tried to design it so I can use it flipped over the other direction and swap a few of things around to represent some of the other rides from the other side of the carnival as well.
All right.
But I had the feeling like a lot of people online were saying, "Oh, this is only one session of the game." But again, like I said earlier, especially in a first session, trying to pull people into a Feywild game, I just feel like being able to drop them in a fantastical setting that actually takes them into that world is really just, it changes the situation, you know?
For sure, yeah.
If I walked into a house and they had that in front of me, I'd be like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, and there's so much more detail, so much detail in it. It's Do you ever get situations where your players are just looking at the terrain and kind of zone out?
Absolutely. I have to get through to my players a lot of the time that they still have to do perception checks because there's stuff there that isn't on the table. I can't build every single detail, but because there's so much there, they're like, "Oh, well, what are those flowers?" I'm like, "Oh, well, they're just terrain.
Are
Like
those
that doesn't matter."
are those racing snails?
They are. That's one of my bigger, more popular early videos, actually. So up until recently, when I think I've gone blank on his name, but Michael something who does a lot of he builds models of every single model, every single monster in D&D. He's finally made his racing snail as well, but no one else really had an option out there for a while. So I kit bash these guys for my own game, and they've been a very popular model out there, which is
Nice.
really fun to see other people printing these out and seeing them painted. And a lot of people have been printing them and giving them to their players to be able to paint them themselves so they can have the crazy shells. And they've been one of the more fun ones, similar to the turtle, seeing how other people have taken that and ran them into their own.
Okay, here are some of the grass stuffs you mentioned earlier, covering up the
Yes,
board.
this was where they were actually originally built for, was for this garden areas of this board here. But as you can see, they're spread throughout this entire board. Anywhere that there's a bit of a seam between where something doesn't quite fit down to the board,
That is a
it
great
just
idea.
covers that up.
Yeah, that is a great idea.
And covering them in flowers just also can help you take a big plain grass board like this, and you can put down some of these flower tufts to add some more depth without having it to be permanent.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. But again, I mean, there's so much detail here. You could just go like keep going over it.
Exactly. And I did those sort of things. I'll just set up and play with for hours. I really like to try and set them up to tell a story as well.
Is that padding timber? The one
No, I don't have a Paddington Bear, but that would be a very fun model to throw down on a table.
I just saw the blue jacket and the hat, and I thought, yeah, but no.
Yeah, no, that's a rabbit-looking scarecrow, like a heron-gone scarecrow.
All right.
I got him from a
Yeah,
Kickstarter or something at some point. I don't know. I've collected a lot of models over the last few years.
yeah. I haven't really looked into the Feywild setting yet, but this looks like a blast.
Yeah, the fact that you can go from this kind of bright, colorful madness to terrifying nightmares really is fascinating to me. And just the whole concept of, they don't trade in money in the Feywild. You have to trade in memories and promises and trinkets.
Yeah, right.
So who knows where the story can go?
Well, the story is going to the Cabinet of Curiosities.
Yeah, so this was what I was saying earlier, how I'm trying to design things now to fit within these existing cheap jars that I've gotten from a local cheap store.
Does
And
it does look super neat, especially with
it
the lighting and
does, it
stuff.
makes them look nice. And as a lot of people know, when we put these kind of miniatures out on display, they end up covered in dust, and
Oh
it's
yeah, for
really
sure.
hard to clean off them. especially the small, intricate corners and details. So having a nice little pile of these has really, it's really come in handy. And I think showing them the stuff off, it adds an element of class to little nerdy builds.
No, it does look super neat, and they have their place kind of thing. So take it off the shelf, play with it, back in the jar, back on the shelf. It does look so much more organized, and it's a really nice display.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to have these sort of things, have the space for them. Like have the shelf behind me that I can film against, where I can have a big pile of my builds. And it's always fun when people come around to see my messy workshop and a big, nice, neat pile of builds on the other side.
Yeah, to be honest, I think I should be really be organizing that because the shelves behind me are kind of like just a pile of stuff.
It all gets carried away. It's actually the main reason why I haven't posted a video in a couple of weeks, is I've been rebuilding or resetting up a room in this house as a proper filming studio. So trying to put together some space where I can actually not be tripping over the camera.
The cleaning up is the side of making of crafting we rarely talk about.
Oh,
Okay,
it's the bane of my existence.
I know, right? So, Lawrence Davis is saying soft makeup brushes are good for dusting delicate items. Thanks for the tip, Lawrence. Uh,
That's a great idea.
and Earthman Brick says the way I paint my miniatures, having a layer of dust on them would be an improvement.
It's
Yeah,
just a bit of texture.
yeah, especially the way Steve just does a lot of grungy and oily and dirty looking textures. So
Brilliant.
it just ages. It just makes it more realistic.
It's a bit of extra patina onto there.
Yeah, kind of thing.
That's great. I need to do, well, no, I don't need to, but I want to do a lot more darker style builds because it's the opposite to my usual style. So it's interesting and fun trying to get onto that, away from the bright, colorful sometimes, and doing something grunge and dark.
Yeah, weathering is fun in its own way. It's like how can I make this look awful in the right way?
Well, that's it. I've done one of my previous builds, which was a big, like a large building, and for Zombicide, it's a ruined camp that our players in, essentially Zombicide is going to be twisted into a D&D style role play, where between each Zombicide game, our players go back to a camp. I built the thing for my mate, and he loves it, but it's too pretty, which makes sense for a zombie apocalypse. And I couldn't agree more. So there's going to have to be another part to this going in forward where we cover it in mud and really dirty it down. But it's so against my normal crafting that it's a very difficult thing for me to do.
Sorry. For that kind of thing, what I usually look at are videos from military modelers. So the people who do World War II tanks, World War II dioramas, and so on.
Yes,
Those are aces at that kind of thing.
definitely. That's the style we'll be going for, I think. Got a pile of mud textures, so I'll just coat it in those.
Okay, next one. And these glitter bugs.
Yeah, so these are my treasure dung beetles.
What?
Anyone that played Elden Ring, I got really obsessed with that game when it came out. Like I think a lot of people out there did. And there's a little creature in that, which is essentially like a dung beetle. So it's
Okay.
crawling around and it's pushing around a treasure pile. And those things just, they set off the dopamine part of your brain when you find them in the game. And all of my friends were playing that game at the same time. So I thought it'd be fun to bring those treasure beetles into our D&D campaign. So every now and again, if I feel like my players need a little bit of something extra, they might come across one of these beetles pushing a pile of gold or treasure across the realm. Maybe if they come across a dragon's hoard, there's a pile of these guys working around it, keeping everything organized for the dragon.
Yeah.
So just a different kind of beast.
Yeah, I'm just imagining moving it around, rolling that pile of gold on my head, and they look hilarious.
Exactly. But yeah, it's just made from a cotton ball. So like what you're seeing there, just dipped in glue and then dipped straight into glitter. And that's
Okay.
literally all it is, with like a little cheap dollar store bug stuck to the side.
But
Again, just one of those,
painted them up,
something
right?
different.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely different. Definitely different. Love the look of them though.
Yeah, that's it. And like I said, I just like the idea of putting something down on the table that even people who may have been well versed in the world of D&D will have no idea what's coming.
Okay, so we've just been going over for an hour and a quarter, and I don't want to keep it too long because it's stupid o'clock where we are right now. But
Yes, it's
what do you say
not too
we
bad.
holding up okay?
Yeah, doing fine.
Okay, that's good. So what do you say we jump into Discord and see what people have thrown in there?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, let's hit it. Okay, what do we have here? Okay, Lawrence has been very, very busy.
Oh, wow.
Okay, this is his,
Geesh.
yeah, I think this is for his mega dungeon. I'm not sure which building he's going to lay it out in, but yeah, he's been making a lot of tiles.
I'm astounded. I wouldn't have the level of patience, I don't believe.
Yeah, me neither. I have no idea how much surface area that would cover. That's like one,
Oh,
two,
yeah,
three,
that's.
four, five, six. So this one is 6 inches by 4, and there's a stack of, oh Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's a lot of space. But I like how there's so much variation, obviously, to it. So
Oh yeah, for sure.
you can throw down anything there. That's good fun. I've just gotten my Dungeons and Lasers Kickstarter arrived, and I've got almost as many tiles that I need to paint, but I wouldn't have had the patience to make them myself. Well done, sir. I salute you.
Yeah, and these are his 38 pillars. The way.
They're really nice as well. I'm assuming you're using a Proxon or some kind of wire cutter because that's some consistent cuts.
Yeah, he does use a proxin, but even with that tool, it takes a certain amount of skill
Oh
to
yeah,
get that consistency, even with all the jigs and stuff.
definitely. I'm I'm speechless. Just the quantity alone throws me.
Yeah, I think it's an update on the same.
Oh, nice. A little bit of something extra on top. I would love to see what this ends up looking like. I'm gonna have to keep track on this.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be looking for updates on this. Okay, and here I think these are some of the Star Wars scatter terrain built.
Oh yes, that is. I love oh the little alien creature down the bottom there is great.
This one, the one with the purple stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was built as a part of a challenge we did on this channel. So we had to use pistachio shells for to build something, and that's what Lawrence came up with.
Oh, that's awesome. I actually thought it was like some kind of pre-done model or something. That's really cool. That's pistachios. And then that weird heart organ looking one is creeping me out a little bit.
Uh, this one, if I'm not sure if it was a no, no, sorry. These were the Easter eggs coated in paper. This one I'm not entirely sure about. Okay.
Oh, all of that looks brilliant.
Oh yeah.
Scatter makes the board. That's the whole thing I think I've realized is I just like to make flat boards and scatter a lot more now because you can take one board and make it into anything if you've got the right scatter.
Yeah, for sure. Lawrence, what's the Yoda's Hut model? Was it a scratch build or was it something that came prepackaged or something like that?
Oh, Yoda's hut.
Yeah, and he's saying that he did the columns in 3 days. That's some serious speed.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, that tree looks brilliant too. It's one thing I struggle with is making tree trunks look big enough sometimes to really give that scale of, the Endor kind of trees and things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that we see in Star Wars.
Thing is that for large, I think he built this around a packing tube or something like that, if I remember correctly. But for larger trees like this, making the armatures and
Texture's
stuff
nice.
doesn't really work.
No.
So we really have to sculpt them around something. He's saying everything except the X-wing was scratch built.
I would have been shocked if the X-Wing was scratch built. That would have been real impressive. But yeah, even the rest of it being scratch built. Well done, mate. And these, I love the draping kind of swamp moss on the trees. I've wanted to do something a bit more like that.
Something more on the creepier, swampy side kind of thing.
Yeah, a bit more of the overgrown or mangrove forest kind of thing. Something drenched in water. I want to play around with some more resin builds, I think. Pouring of resin.
I see you like to live dangerously.
Like we were saying, I like to experiment with different things as much as I can. I've done a
Resin,
couple of resin pours, but they're hit and miss.
yeah, that's the same impression I have of resin.
Mm. Seeing some of the stuff online that people can do, just
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I can't comprehend. I don't know how they manage, but yeah, I'd love to get there.
I love all these textures and things he works into the build.
Yeah, that's what I was just looking at. It makes me wonder. Like, I thought for a second, is that a pre-purchased piece or something? Because it makes it just nice and alien.
No, I think
But
he did the
scratch
scratch build.
build,
Yeah,
yeah. You mentioned before that everything was scratch built, so that's cool. Oh yeah, there's the
here's a
Yoda's
hut.
hut. Ah, I see. It's like a paper mache kind of
Yeah,
thing. I
looks
think you're
that way. Yeah.
doing, is it? That's awesome. I really like it when like something like this again could be used for fantasy as well. Like you could throw this down on any D&D table as some
It
creepy
fits right in.
little,
Yeah.
yeah, like a hag's hut or something. And one of my favorite things about doing Star Wars builds is that just by taking a couple of pieces of space scatter and replacing it with an old crate or something, you
hmm
can take them into a fantasy setting really easily.
Remember that Star Wars isn't science fiction; it's space fantasy.
Exactly. Yeah, that pistachio beast. I might have to copy that at some point.
Okay, this is another area that Dungeon Matron has been working on.
Oh, I love those kind of central pieces. I do want to get to a point where I do a big, like, wizard's den kind of build with these kinds of small details. I've outside of my videos, I've played around making a few pieces. I think similarly, what you've got here is watch gears. Is that, or are they just?
I think these are just
I think they're
decorations.
just some little decorations. Yeah.
The clock itself has a clock mechanism running under it, so the whole thing turns. But I
Oh,
think the ones on the
fantastic.
outside are just decorations.
Yeah, having it move, that's next level. I haven't gotten to that point with my ones yet. I've just glued a whole heap of watch gears together to look like some weird wizard's den.
Okay, and it doesn't really show very well in this photo, but the texture on the floor is really nicely done.
Yeah, it's got that marble through it.
Yeah,
I've tried to do marbling effects a few times and I can't get them for the life of me.
Lisa, do you have a clear photo of the marble texture because that really turned out good? And if I remember correctly, she just did this by sponging with a wet what do you call it? Sponge.
That's yeah, you can't give away too many secrets. No, yeah, that came out really nice. I like that a lot. Getting nice stone textures is that's really the key to most of our craft, isn't it?
Oh yeah. You know, stone and maybe wood, but I'd say that
Mm.
yeah, most of it is stone textures.
All of our dungeons,
Hmm?
all of the dungeons,
Dungeons and caverns
every one of those
and
tiles,
tunnels. Yeah.
as Lawrence showed, a lot of stone.
Okay. So, regarding your projects, where are you planning to go on from here? Building anything?
Um, yeah, well, my current build that's probably about 90% done. Like I was saying, is I'm building a pop culture related house. So I'm actually taking the house from The Simpsons and I'm
Oh,
building
okay.
it into a D&D setting. So taking that style, building the full house out, using that, but in a fantasy setting. And then I've used Hero Forge to make the family. So I've then built and printed out some fantasy versions of The Simpsons. So they'll show up in my game at some point. Um, that kind of thing. And like I was saying, just taking weird inspiration from pop culture. And then I've also been building up a bit more of a filming studio space.
Right.
So at the moment, I'm in the room that I'm in here, which is just my office. So this is where I do my day job as well. But having day job, work computer, film space, workshop in one room is a bit of a mess. So I've been building out a new space downstairs and refurbishing some old furniture and trying to give it a bit more of a fantasy vibe. Um, but yeah, just really trying to get everything going so it's easy for me to build things going forward. So trying to prep that. So I've done that big push of build. And then, like I was saying, in a couple of weeks, I'll be working with Cody from Of Dice and Magic, and we're going to do a big full board scale, like Halloween skeleton full board.
I will be looking forward to see
So
that.
yeah, that's something we've been talking about for a while, and he's already built a couple of elements of it. So it'll be fun to get together with him again and put something ridiculous together on the table.
Okay, some people have dropped in some more pictures here. Just 1 second. Okay. So these
Oh,
curtains,
speaking of nightmare fuel,
yeah, these were also done for a challenge here. These are dollar store skeletons that Sean wrapped up in tea bag fabric.
beautiful. They look like the same kind of skeletons from my fairy builds.
And the coloring is done with lighting mostly. This isn't their real color, but it does make them look super creepy.
Oh, that's half the fun though. When you run a game, it's setting up the whole house with your lights to paint the picture, right? I like to get the LEDs that I can control the colors of and crank the aircon if the room's meant to be cold and paint the setting.
Have you been following Atmoseeker?
Absolutely. I've been watching his stuff from early on. He's a fellow Seb, another
Yeah.
Australian as well.
Okay, here's a better picture of the marble texture from earlier.
That is stunning. I feel like it would go nicely with some like Renaissance painting.
Uh, awesome stuff. Okay, one
So much
second.
variation. You've done very well there. I'm gonna have to try out with the wet sponge technique.
Wet sponge and I think twirling a brush, but Lisa will be able to explain it more at some other point, I guess. When she sets up her YouTube channel, which she assures us she won't, but she will.
Just a matter of time. I thought I'd never do this either. I was so uncomfortable on camera, even as someone who, like again, like I was saying, it's my job to make videos. I've been behind a camera since I was 14. As soon as I stood in front of the camera, I didn't know how to speak. I didn't know where to put my hands. I didn't know what I was doing. And it's taken me almost a year now of making videos before I've gotten even slightly comfortable with it. I still feel very weird when I look at the camera and when I'm editing myself, but
Yeah, I know what
you
you mean.
should do it. I would highly recommend to anyone. The feeling when someone has sent me any of the messages where someone's taken any kind of inspiration, or when I'm sent a photo of someone who's made one of my builds and using it on their table, I can't explain how awesome that feels. It really is. It's more like it means more to me now than the game or anything, is that being able to inspire other people or just add something to someone else's fantasy. It's really cool. And I encourage all of you guys to put out the stuff that you come up with and share it, because this community is really, really welcoming. Just don't post on Reddit because they can get a bit harsh.
It depends. I mean, where do we post on Reddit? Where have you posted on Reddit? Because the couple of subreddits I've posted on seem to be quite welcoming.
It depends. I think as soon as something reaches a certain point of viewing, so
Good
say a
point.
couple of my videos broke free of just being shown on the D&D and they were being shown on home pages, then you get all kinds of internet people.
Okay, yeah, literally a case of becoming
No,
a
no,
victim of your own
it's never
success.
too bad. I've never had anything too bad. Just a lot of eye rolls, I think, from my end of people complaining about our community in general. You know, a lot of people that don't want to give this stuff a go look at it with a certain perspective, but I can say from personal experience that they're usually the ones that get the most into it when they finally play the game.
Oh yes, Dungeon Matron says, I used a straw to blow water down paint to make some of the marble veins. I followed with a thin brush, twisting it lightly across the board.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and word of warning, if you do that, don't do too much at once or you'll knock yourself out.
Yeah. Oh no, I did. I used my own lungs to try and do that for one of my resin pours, do the water effects, and I think I'm going to get the airbrush out for the next one of those.
Good call. Okay, man. I think we can wrap this up today. Thank you so much for joining
Yeah,
us, even if
that's
it's
this has
been a
been
crazy time.
this has been great. It's been really good to talk to you, mate. Like, yeah, talking to more people in the community is always awesome. And any of you guys that want to ever ask any questions or anything, or if you have any ideas for builds, feel free to reach out. I'm just a massive dork on this stuff, like most of us, and I could talk about it for days.
Okay, it's been so great talking to you, and hope we'll see you again soon, either in your videos or definitely watching out for that Halloween build you mentioned.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you very much for the time tonight, Carl. And thanks,
no,
guys, for
thank you for
tuning in.
joining
It's
us. It
been
was a
awesome to
pleasure.
see what you guys have made too.
Okay, so thanks everyone. Thanks Seb, and have a great day or night. Bye.
Yep, off to bed for me. See you guys.
See ya.